The clean story is, the late Mar-gite siege fighting was something I volunteered to do. Why not? I was good at it. Yethi Tirlos, veteran of the Mar-gite siege of Cygnus Orion. Resubmit in 90 days for further disapproval. Every military ever. He just wanted left alone. Etcher. Enraged Philip. Digital Omni-Messiah era. Breaker had always been exactly what you saw on the tin. A little above average for a Kra'at Descent Human at 7 foot 15 centimeters tall. He had a sculpted body with a 24-inch neck, flexed arms, calves, a 70-inch chest, 40-inch waist, 38-inch thighs. He weighed in at 400 pounds and could bench press over a half-ton in 1.5 gravity. Short-cut blonde hair, startling blue eyes, and a chin a dwarf could forge armor on. He was expressively, undeniably, without a doubt, obvious to everyone who saw him. Human ... From a young age he'd been almost a cliché. A rambunctious, rowdy, and oftentimes hyper little boy. As a teenager he embraced sports as much as academics, embracing the Kra'at founding tyrant's philosophy of the nation that will insist on drawing a broad line of demarcation between the fighting man and the thinking man, is liable to find its fighty and done by fools and its thinking by cowards, and that one should sculpt their intellect as fiercely as their body. He got high marks in school, both in advanced studies and in physical education. He was a drive on his juggerball team and a theorist on the mathlete team. In other words, he was a cliché of humans in the Kra'at systems. From 1,600 humans to billions by the time Johnathon Josie Breaker was born. When he was 5, his little sister was born. She was the apple of his eye, and for the first 2 years of her life he carried her everywhere. To Johnny Breaker she was absolutely perfect. The universe existed just to create his wonderful younger sister. She would tease him about being so fit, about pushing himself in everything, telling him that the wars were over. The Kra'at systems had not been involved in a war in 10,000 years, and everyone agreed there would never be another major war. Breaker didn't care. It wasn't about war. It was about always striving for perfection. An unattainable goal that invited one to reach out and push oneself just a little more. When he was 25, after completing his education, he started everyone but his baby sister by joining the Kra'at system's military services. Specifically the planetary guard of his homeworld, Dalkanea. His sister went to every graduation ceremony. In time, with her own children to see Uncle John complete another school. Advanced Infantry Training, Orbital Drop School, Striker Insertion School, Ranger School. Special Services School, Underwater Infantry Specialization Training. It didn't matter if all he was getting was a single certificate. She was there with her husband and her children. Her husband joked to his friends that his brother-in-law was the only man he knew that he prayed never actually had to do his job. Which is why when the Mar-gite Constructs came across the wall, his brother-in-law didn't argue. He dragged the most precious thing in Breaker's reality into the shelter, by force, even as she pleaded with Staff Sergeant Breaker to come with her, to guard the shelters. Don't throw your life away, Johnny. Don't be a hero. He wished he had possessed the snappy answer civilian volunteer Azezki Kromo. That it was his to throw away. Now he was slamming shotgun shells into his 8-gauge as fast as he could. He held it out, one-handed, and pulled the trigger. Demon's breath rounds gouting foof made fire straight into the face of one of the new creatures. It had a conical body like a bullet on its side, with dozens of articulated biomechanical tentacles radiating from the bullet-like body. The mouth was full of black teeth, surrounded by blue eyes, with deeper inside nothing but a red glow. They died like anything else when shot point-blank center mass with a demon's breath round. He slapped 4 rounds in, cocked it once, and fired again, blowing a hole clean through the Mar-gite, and splattering the next one with foof and shredded Mar-gite meat. Breaker had his head tilted so that his shoulder pressed the button on the mic he'd clipped to his gear. "Metric butt-ton of Mar-gite all over us," he shouted over the din. A Mar-gite dart glanced off the car he was standing next to, making a high-pitched whining sound as it arced up into the sky. Breaker answered with a shot. He slapped 2 more shells into the feed. Need close air support. Danger close. Marking with orange smoke, he called out. He kicked one back, yanking his foot back before the Mar-gite could stick on it, then fired once. The smart systems were down, so he didn't have the adaptive smart grav kick system that would come on when he kicked out. That meant he needed to yank his foot back, or, better yet, not use a reflex that was going to get him killed. Roger. Meep, 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 came through the static. Reinforcements for street-level meep, meep, and danger close meep, meep air support incoming. Mark with orange smoke. Yada. Breaker just blinked hard in frustration, even as he acknowledged the air support channels were full of hash. The so-called unjammable paired spooky particle or quark systems were nothing but howling static with screams and the sounds of people begging for mercy twisting through the sounds. But Breaker was an educated man, and knew that the same kind of thing had happened during the Second Precursor War, according to historical records, and there were some unverified reports of it happening during the Second Mar-gite War and the Mar-gite War. Resurgence up on the Confederacy. If they won the Second Precursor War with blown-out commo, I can ride this whore to the stable and put her up broken and wet, he thought as he stepped to the side, letting the Mar-gite slam against the car, and then shot it from the side. The windows of the skyraker above shattered outward as a rippling sphere of clear gelatin with a weird creature floated out. Breaker let the shotgun fall on the sling, reaching back over his shoulder and grabbing the 40mm grenade launcher. Foo, foo, foo! Veille screamed out as Breaker leveled the launcher. She fired the rocket almost straight up. Breaker could see the creature gathering phasic energy right before the foof hit, coating the whole globe, part of the skyraker, and 2 bullet buddies that had darted out of the hole. His 40mm hit with a shower of golden sparks and a purple snap. The phasic force field cut out and everything plummeted to the street level, trailing fire. Firing ground support. Meep, meep, dot-a-t. Incoming. 30 Sierra. Dot. Meep, meep, dot-a. Germany, now. Breaker just nodded, gritting his teeth as he kicked one of the Mar-gite that were trying to grab one of his volunteers. It staggered to the side and Breaker shot it through one side and out the other, blood, cartilage, calcite teeth, and worse, suddenly vomiting out of the mouth, along with ruptured stomach tissue. Here they come, the cameraman yelled, pointing at the sky. Breaker didn't look. Reinforcements incoming. Check your fire, he shouted out. What fell out of the sky made Breaker blink, breaking through his professional demeanor. Red felt puppets fell screaming from the sky to land in a heap, splattering on the pavement. 4 smaller purple ones were floating down on parachutes and balloons. A tall, wide-eyed puppet with a tuft of hair on top landed via rocket pack, dropping the pack and raising a cavalry sword. Meep! Meep, 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 wait, it shouted. One of the purple ones with the curled nose lifted up a pistol. Music, maestro, it shouted. Breaker didn't pay attention to the escapades of the puppets, turning his attention to his men. So far, he hadn't lost anyone. He didn't see any severe injuries. He didn't see any Mar-gite either for the first time in hours. It's bad. Real bad, he thought. He keyed the mic. Air support on target. Over. There. Named high. One of the puppets threw a catapult on the ground that suddenly grew to large size. Meep. Dot-o. Meep. 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 Dot-o. Meep, the tall one said. The red ones piled into the catapult. The purple ones got in too. The tall one pulled the lever. They all screamed in glee as they flew away. The catapult disintegrated. One of his volunteers looked at him. Sergeant? What was that? Breaker just stared for a second. I have no idea, kid. I have no idea. Don't say. The radio popped and Breaker touched his earpiece. 00000. Jane nodded as she tabbed up 2 more airfields. She prioritized decrypting napalm and gun rounds, sticking with chemical reactions. The weird friends the starfish-appearing Mar-gite had brought along this time seemed to be able to disrupt anything smaller or more complex than 5nm circuits, which meant she was sticking in the 25nm range, or large. Hell, you could see some of the circuit traceries with the naked eye for the chipsets her fabs were rolling out. Integrated circuits, microchips, not nanochips or molecular circuitry. She grabbed a cold Countess Craze strawberries and titty milk, guzzling down the whole can and tossing it over her shoulder to land in the grinder on the back wall, even as she typed with one hand. Prioritizing air support. Odin had flashed her data to put out the Felt Marines. She hadn't needed them. She knew she would own this planet within hours. But Odin wasn't her. Had never seen her work. Her first orbital cannons were reporting hits on Mar-gite clusters approaching the planet. The docks reported Gauss cruisers launching, their main guns able to hit at astronomical distances, nothing more high-tech than standard 25mm microchips, and non-polymorphic code in ArcEX 64-bit architecture. Did tech ... She grabbed a juice box, the heat of the inside of the command pod making it so her naked body was covered in sweat. Everything not microchips was shut down, tossed in the grinder, and ignored. She could do this with 8-bit and cathode ray tubes, and physical machinery, rather than hard light framework, and nanite-forged spray matter. Hell, she had won wars during the Second Precursor War with nothing better than micro-vacuum tubes, microchips, cathode ray tubes, and physical machinery rather than hard light framework and nanite-forged spray matter. There was a beep to let her know that the air defense guns for Sector 7 were now live. Her dumbbutts rushed for Sector 7 to build the defense guns, their treads spewing loam and vegetation behind them. If she had to, she'd rip this world down to the bedrock, encase the shelters in war steel armor, then Jenny Gecko the whole thing, so the shelter survivors could exit out into Eden. Another shelter was reporting damage to their main access door. She copied the coordinates, swept her viewpoint to the Felt Marine Deployment Catapult System, and put in the new coordinates, then tabbed 2 companies. She put 2 flights of Catgirl biplanes into an attack run to clear the streets with ghost napalm. The nice thing about the paired spooky particles is that she could hold off on the napalm igniting and do it all at once it was layered properly. The Felt Marines were loaded. She could tell by the celebratory colors of the balloons on the NCO's landing systems. She ignited the ghost napalm and launched her Felt Marines at the target. More request. She tossed the requests onto the left-hand monitor, popped her keyboard in half, and tasked a half to each monitor. She kept glancing back and forth, letting her eyes wet where naturally move them together, just enough so they looked like one large screen. Orders were typed in at 125 words per minute. Orders were clicked at a rate of 6.511.2 clicks per second. She wasn't in the zone yet, but she was getting there. Another beep. Infantry Company, Planetary Defense Force, regular, pinned down by Mar-gite, with Type 2 phasic support units and Type 5 phasic assault units. She fired 2 companies of Felt Marines and tasked a B-52 for a close-in bombing run supported by sloppy-width Camel biplanes. She also sent a copper-tone phasic temporal crackerjack weapon with full submunition load that would detonate 3.5 seconds before the Felt Marines entered terminal glide pattern and the B-52 got below 2,000 feet. A quick double-check showed that the maximum Skyraker height was 1,500 feet. Only 150 stories. Everything else had been flattened by atomics. A tank company was under heavy assault by Mar-gite standard biomechanical assault forms, starfish pattern.dia. The tanks had heavy NB-Carn, nuclear, biological, chemical, antimatter, radiation, nanite, protection. She detonated a dirty neutron atomic, sleeting the area with enough radiation that she saw the Mar-gite were melting as her drones did, high-speed flyby with high-speed lens cameras. Digital cameras were useless, too much RADs. Optical lens, silver-backed film, then algorithms written in 64-bit to pack the image into a 3200 dpi belevel image that was tapped back to her with rapid-fire Morse code clicks. Binary for the win. Jane grabbed a wad of gravy-soaked turkey meat and jammed it in her mouth as she kept clicking. She was dug in now. Time to go on the offensive. 00000.